Owners of America, and who's going to speak to us during lunch. Wes Friedel, we're grateful that you're here. Wes is the Texas Director of Gun Owners of America, and I understand you are born and raised in Texas as well, right? Okay, excellent. And the descendant of a ranger that passed in the Battle of the Alamo, which is a pretty incredible and fitting tribute right now as libertarians fight beside people, the owners of Moses Roses. And make sure that property can't be stolen.
Hey, how you doing today? I'm going to try to condense 2 speeches into one in about 20 or 30 minutes. So if I'm talking fast, you'll understand why. I'm going to pull up a keynote here. So as she talked about, I did have a relative that died at the Alamo. He was one of the immortal 32 from Gonzales. If you remember William Travis had sent out a request for help, and my relative Jonathan Lindley was one of those 32 men from Gonzales that came to the Battle of the Alamo. They knew they were amazing, and they were willing to do it. Real quick history about me. Aside from that, Air Force on ICBMs, and anyways, born in Brownwood, Texas, raised in Brady, Texas, if you know where that is. Fantastic place. But anyways, came back to Brady after I got out of the Air Force. Maybe you remember the 2008 TAR bailout? Yeah, that's when. Yeah, okay. So anyways, that's what really kind of got my attention. Ron Paul, right around the same time, got my attention. And I'll tell you a couple things. What was mentioned earlier, Ruby Ridge, Waco. When Waco happened, I was in Stephenville, and we were going to transfer my grandma off to my cousins. And anyways, I remember sitting at Amazio's Pizza and watching that happen, right? As a 13-year-old, that first day when it kicked off. That kind of said something in me too. And luckily I had good parents who always pushed on me, don't trust the government. I think we would all agree with that in this room, is that correct? Yeah, so anyways, the 2008 thing kicked off, the TAR bailout. I watched our congressman vote for that. And then Ron Paul really kind of opened my eyes before that. Kind of thought Bush was the right guy, that we were doing what we're supposed to. Anyway, to figure out real quickly what was going on there. To jump back to GOA, we were founded in 1976, and in 76 it was H.O. Richardson out of California, back when California was an amazing state politically compared to what it is now. But H.O. Richardson had stepped away from the NRA and wanted to create a youth organization that stood up for your rights, that truly stood for the Second Amendment. Our main slogan is no compromise. We do everything we can to make sure the Second Amendment is kept in its integrity. Starting in 1934 with the National Firearms Act. If you all are familiar with that, that's what created the ATF. That's what started putting restrictions on short barrel shotguns, short barrel rifles, and suppressors. Anyways, machine guns was at that time too. That might have been 86 when that was done. But pretty sad deal. Ever since then, we've pretty much had a job to fight back against the Second Amendment. The 1934 was an egregious overstep of the Second Amendment, and since then we've had at least eight major acts that have been filed by Republicans and Democrats to restrict your gun rights. What we do at GOA is we constantly are going to the state legislations and to the federal legislations and trying to get them to vote the right way, or at least to stop bad bills. And every time that they don't, then we usually end up filing a lawsuit. I've been on board as a state director for a year now, and since I came on board, I know of, I think 5 major lawsuits that we've been involved in with some wins. We currently have 2 lawsuits filed in Texas at the moment. One is against Joe Biden's pistol brakes ban, and we filed that. We co-filed that with the Attorney General's office, and glad to be a part of that, but we hope that we get a victory there. There's 3 other lawsuits that are filed in Texas too for the pistol brakes ban, and there's more outside of the state. So we think we have a good chance at challenging this. And right now the courts have aligned with our side a lot on a lot of our lawsuits. So we think we're in good position for this bill to challenge it. For those who aren't familiar with the pistol brakes ban, that has to do with, if you're familiar with an AR pistol, the ATF for years has said that we could have a pistol brace on the AR pistol, and you could even shoulder it. That would be, because there was about 10 years ago, there was concern about whether you could shoulder the pistol brace or not. ATF came out with a letter saying that's not a problem to do that. So there's an estimated 40 million AR pistols currently in existence in America, and Joe Biden has used the ATF to rewrite language without congressional oversight, and now they are trying to tell us that every one of us in possession of those AR pistols either have to take the pistol brace off or we're going to be labeled as a felon. And so basically tell everybody, hey, this is completely legal, and then just say, no, now you should be a felon if you still have possession of that. So that's one of the ones we're fighting against. We're also fighting against Joe Biden's bipartisan Make Communities Safer Act. If y'all are familiar with John Horton, not a fan. GOA is not a fan of John Horton. He does not keep his oath to the Constitution. And in that bill, it made delays for 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. So if you're in that range and you go to buy a shotgun or a rifle, you're going to end up with a minimum of 10-day delay to purchase that rifle or shotgun, and it could be extended as far as 20 days. So imagine you're a 19-year-old female, you're being harassed by somebody, you want to go buy a rifle or a shotgun to protect yourself. You now have to wait that many days to get it, and you just have to hope that that guy or girl or whoever's harassing you does not decide to come to you within those days. We at GOA believe that a right delayed is a right denied. Your right should be recognized immediately at this very moment. You shouldn't have to have the government telling you to wait on it. One of the things we talk about a lot right now is the Uvalde shooting and where the fault lies on that. You know, there's a lot of anti-gunners coming to the Capitol. Unfortunately, they're the ones that are making most of the contact with the legislators right now. On the pro-gun side, we see very low turnout at the Capitol this year. Let the legislators know where we stand at. And it's disheartening because we had a fantastic win it's a permitless carry, we call it constitutional carry, but we had a fantastic win in 2021. I started coming to the Capitol back in 2011 for the open carry push. A lot of y'all got to watch that happen. And in 2015, we won the open carry push. That was Open Carry Texas that really kind of led that. And then once we had enough momentum, every session building up, and it got to where the legislators couldn't ignore that. What do we know about most people that campaign as pro-gun and get elected? They generally don't adhere to the Second Amendment, right? Like, it's a great talking point. Running for office, which I've done, is all about marketing, and it's about telling the largest percentage of voters in your district what they want to hear. And unfortunately, a lot of people listen to the rhetoric that comes out of the marketing, falls for it, thinks, oh, this guy's great. And I'm getting a little off topic here, but something else we see is you meet a politician, right? And people get fanboy over politicians. Well, anyways, the politician spends 3 minutes talking to you or whatever, takes a picture with your kid or something like that. All of a sudden, people just become, it's like, oh, this is the greatest guy ever. This guy's fighting for us. And what I like to tell people is, hey, 80% of people think Congress is doing a terrible job, and 80% of people think that their representative is fighting for them. It's sad. It's that representative you have is really good at marketing to you what you want. And unfortunately, we often end up in the minority on that. Well, my job at the Capitol is to engage with these legislators and say, hey, you campaigned as pro-Second Amendment. We'll go back and look at their websites and their mailers, and if they campaigned as that and then they won't support our bills that we're pushing, then it's our job to hold them accountable. We are no compromise, so that's what we're supposed to do, is hold them accountable on that. We have a couple of bills right now. I'll give you a quick rundown on the process if you're not familiar with it. So there were 250 bills filed at the Capitol this session here in Texas. 150 of them were anti-gun. 50 of them were kind of neutral, and then roughly 50 were pro-gun. Out of the pro-gun bills, the 50 pro-gun bills, we're hoping that 2 or 3 actually end up making it and becoming law. Basically we end up writing the bills. We have a legal team that is fantastic. If y'all watched Armed Attorneys on YouTube, those guys, their law firm helps us out and write some of our bills, and fantastic guys. But then we find legislators to file those bills. We're lucky that we have some legislators who are hardcore 2A, and they'll file it. And then once it gets filed, it has to go into a committee. It has to get voted on and heard in that committee, then voted on the committee, then it goes to calendars. I'm going to tell you real quick at that committee point. So Briscoe Cain filed a bill 1894 to make it where Texas can never implement red flag laws in Texas. Moving along fantastically, great bill. And whenever it gets to the committee vote, 2 Republicans walked out so that they wouldn't have to vote on it, because if they voted for it, the bill's going to progress on to calendars and then to the floor to be voted on. If they don't vote on it, then there's enough anti-gunners / Democrats that are going to vote against the bill, and it's going to kill the bill right there. And unfortunately, that is what happened about 2 nights ago. They had the committee hearing. 2 of the Republicans walked out and killed the bill. So, you know, you think you got 150 legislators in the House side of the state legislature. And anyways, 2 Republicans were the ones that killed that bill. So you can guarantee who we are going to be working against in the next Republican primary because of that. You know, I mean, I don't know how they're going to make that up when they're the guys that caused this fantastic bill where they campaign as pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment. And to be clear, there's a difference between pro-gun and pro-Second Amendment too, right? Everybody hears the people that say, oh, I support the Second Amendment, but when it comes to that, that means you don't actually support the Second Amendment. You might be pro-gun. And we hear Democrats say this all the time in committee hearings. They talk about, oh, I'm pro-gun, but he was like, no, you're not. You're sitting here railing against this bill that we're trying to get through. Another bill, so I talked about going to calendars. We have a bill in calendars right now. I talked about the short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns. In the Texas Penal Code, in the prohibited weapons list, it listed as short-barreled weapons. And anyway, so basically, based on Texas Penal Code, you can't have what is defined as a short-barreled weapon, which is a rifle under 16 inches or a shotgun under 18 inches. So we have a bill very simple. And the way this bill came about was we were in the Capitol. I was getting ready to leave. And a guy named Tom Glass, some of y'all might know Tom. Anyways, Tom says, hey, you remember the Suppressor Freedom Bill? And I said, yeah, great bill. And he's like, why can't we do that with short-barreled weapons? So I called our lawyer, and our lawyer says, hey, I can have that bill for you in 5 minutes. We ended up getting a guy to file it. Ended up getting 2 guys to file it. So anyways, it's moving great. We're putting a lot of effort behind this bill. Now it's sitting in calendars. It passed out of committee. Most of the Democrats, or my understanding is all the Democrats on calendars, has agreed to not object to this bill. It takes 1 person in calendars to tag the bill, and then it dies there. Like, it'll never get to the floor to get a vote on. And a bunch of these guys that campaign as pro-gun love when this bill gets killed, right, in committee or in the calendars, because then they can still run and tell everybody how pro-gun they are, but they just say, hey, I supported that bill, it just didn't make it. What they don't tell you is that they didn't help push that bill through or talk to their co-legislators that are not supporting this bill where it could be killed. So we have a guy right now, and anyways, this Republican on the calendars committee has indicated he's going to tag this bill and kill it before it gets to the floor. So we have this fantastic bill to get short-barreled weapons off. And one of the reasons, multiple reasons why this is a great bill, but one of the reasons why this is a great bill is we're also suing the ATF for their pistol brace ban. We think that this can, we think that this can set the state penal code up correctly where it needs to be more in line with the Second Amendment. And we also think that we are going to have a federal win. So once we have the win in the federal and we have our bill passed in the state, which is, we're not sure if it's going to happen right now. When that happens, now we have the federal and the state penal code all in line to where anybody here could have a shotgun with a 16-inch barrel or a rifle with a 12-inch barrel. I run a short-barreled rifle in competitions, and it's a fantastic gun. But you know, we look at New Zealand. New Zealand's a great place. They don't recognize the length of a barrel as an issue. So I had built this one gun that had this ridiculous 8-inch 454 Casull barrel on it. And I sent it to a guy in New Zealand. He bought it. He had to do paperwork to get it over there, but he didn't have to get permission from his government to have an 8-inch barrel. So he had what we call a short-barreled rifle in New Zealand with the 8-inch barrel on it. His government didn't care. They also don't care about suppressors, right? They don't think that the possession of a suppressor makes you a dangerous person or that you have to get government permission. You shouldn't have to ask permission from your government to begin with. The Second Amendment is a restriction. The Second Amendment is a restriction on the government. It's not a restriction on the citizen. Anything the government does that infringes on your right to own that firearm, that is a violation of the Second Amendment. And then that gets into, which Josie had mentioned a while ago, we almost didn't have a Bill of Rights. In 1787 at the Philadelphia Convention, only 3 guys resisted signing the Constitution, and they were from Massachusetts and Virginia and maybe New York. George Mason and 2 other guys were there. Those guys, I think we kind of owe them a huge amount of gratitude, because if those 3 guys had given in to the pressure of their peers to say, well, everybody else is signing this, we should go ahead and do it, we wouldn't have the Bill of Rights right now. We wouldn't have the First through the 10th Amendment. Can you imagine the Constitution without the Bill of Rights in it? And because 3 guys had the courage, we would look at our Texas legislature, or a lot of y'all watched on the federal side, y'all watched 20 guys refused to vote for Kevin McCarthy. Remember that? Chip Roy and 19 other guys. And there were actually a couple more that were holdouts that were ready to shift their vote away from McCarthy. But anyways, it's the minority that makes the difference, you know, and as libertarians, a lot of times you're considered in the minority, unfortunately, but the minority has the ability to flex their muscle and force things to happen the right way. So we look at those 3 guys. By the way, my code word politically is I'm a Jeffersonian Republican. That should tell you I'm a minarchist, so that should tell you where I come from. But anyways, in the minority, we have the ability to flex our muscle to stand up. So even though it feels like we're in the minority at the Capitol at the moment, we do have the ability to put pressure on them. And like I said, we owe those 3 guys an immense amount of gratitude for standing up to that. Ultimately, our goal is to continue doing this. We are membership driven. One thing I promise not to do is to send you a cheap bag from China when you sign up for a membership. That's your money. We believe we're supposed to be good stewards of the money that y'all donate to GOA. So we don't have fancy buildings, fancy planes, anything like that, fancy facilities. Your money goes directly into lawsuits and to legislative stuff in the states. GOA before 2016 wasn't involved a lot in state legislature. They were mostly focused on the federal. And where do we start losing at? We lose at the local level. That's where. So GOA came in real strong in 2016, and 5 years after that, constitutional carry got passed. We had, and really, I say GOA, but really it comes down to the people showing up to the Capitol, engaging with their legislators. I talked to a Republican legislator, a senator, the other morning as I was walking into the Capitol, and I'm talking about. Am I running close on time? Okay, cool. So, anyways, as the senator's walking in, I catch his attention, and I say, hey, here's the bills we're looking at. Here's where we stand. And he says, hey, I hear you, and I'm with you, but our office is being overwhelmed with people calling, asking what we're going to do about Uvalde. Uvalde. And I explained this to him, but he's like, I understand, but we're looking at how many people are calling in. They're literally keeping a tally in their offices for who calls in and where they stand at. Like, if you call in and say, hey, I'm pro-gun, please support this bill. Okay, there's a tally for that one. 2 people call in and say, hey, we're against this bill. Okay, there's 2 marks there. And what they're saying is this going to cost me an election? Ultimately, that's what that legislator is worried about. There's some good legislators there. But in general, as a stereotypical statement, they are worried about whether they're going to get reelected, right? And so it has to do with who they hear from. If they're worried that whatever position they take is going to cost them an election, then they'll shift that position most likely. Not always, but most likely. So what I'm asking is if y'all can be engaged as possible at the Capitol, come up there, talk to your legislators. You can walk right into their office and talk to their staff. You walk you go to the extension, which is you go into the Capitol, go down 2 floors, and then look on the board. It tells you where their office is, or you can look it up online, Texas Legislature online. Go knock on their door and say, hey, I'm a constituent, and I just want to know where you stand on this bill. And that meters, like you have phone calls, which, you have emails. Emails is kind of like the bottom, but it's still good, and they get a lot of messages say, okay, we know where these people stand on this bill. But then you have phone calls. Phone calls means you actually took like the effort to look the number up, to call them, to have a discussion with them. So they'll put that at a higher kind of score point. And then they'll say, how many people came into our office and talked about this situation? So the strongest thing you can do is actually show up to their office, talk to them. I would say this: if you do show up, don't berate them, don't tell them that they're terrible people in this world, but talk to them the way you would want to be talked to, and just tell them, hey, here's where we stand. We hope you support it. Sometimes they'll tell you what you want to hear and they walk off, but sometimes they'll take it to heart and listen. If you have enough of those people showing up, then they start getting concerned about their reelection. So that's something that I think is very critical. I'm going to go and wrap on that. Do y'all have any questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
If somebody wanted to contact the members of the calendar committee to get your bill moving, not that that's there's an awful lot of stuff there right now, unfortunately, in the house. But what is the number of your bill in case everybody wants to call all the members of the?
It's a great question. HB 2705, HB 2705. And that's our short rail weapon bill. We want to see that bill get through. We wanted to see Kane's get through, but anyways, that stopping the red flag bill got killed by 2 Republicans, which is incredibly disappointing. The way that the committees are structured is the Speaker of the House, as far as the House side goes, the Speaker of the House appoints who's going to be on the committees. This session, he had a ton of pushback from grassroots saying, please don't appoint Democrats to chair committees. And anyways, he still ended up, I think 8 or 11 committees, something like that, ended up with Democrats on it. Some people that campaign as Republican love when this happens, because then when their bills get killed, they can go back to the district and say, hey, I supported it, but it was killed by a Democrat. And they know that most of the people are not going to know any different when they get there, right? They're just like, oh, it was a Democrat. But the person that's telling you that probably voted for the Speaker of the House that put those people on that committee. So keep that in mind too. And I want to say, I sound like I'm probably going really hard on legislators. There's some great legislators there. But there's also some people that are love attention, we'll put it that way. So love looking at themselves in the mirror. So we got to keep that in mind too. Any other questions? No, awesome. Yes, sir.
Yeah, roughly how many gun owners would be made felons by this man? What's an estimate?
So if they're estimated there's 40 million AR pistols, I don't know what that translates into ownership, but I would guess probably 20 million or something like that. So, and we have the power. I'm a nullification kind of guy. I believe in nullifying all unconstitutional laws and all immoral laws. We have an obligation to resist that. And if one of you want to become the test case, I'm not encouraging you to do that or anything, but that's how a lot of times it's people having the courage to stand up against their government whenever most people will cower down and do what the government tells them. So if we live in fear, we will never have joy in our lives and we will never win any victories. So it's that simple. Yes, sir. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So you were mentioning before how they take talent and stuff, and I think it's really important for libertarians to kind of listen up on this stuff, because then sometimes I feel like that flies over their head. How important is it and how effective is it when they actually get on the line and make calls? Like they get serious about it, and I don't think it actually looks at, I know the tallies and I know the many calls, they reported and all that stuff, but for example, if they get 3 calls, they're like, okay, they get maybe 200, 300 phone calls, especially to a state rep. How effective is that for libertarians? Because I don't think that they process that a lot.
Yeah, I think it's pretty effective. One thing that can help is tell them, hey, I'm a liberal, and don't tell me you're classical. Just say liberal, right? You don't know any different. Anyways, like, oh, we're getting Democrats that are supporting this bill too or something. Let them make their own thoughts. I hear that. But anyways, I think it's really important that when you call in, that know the bill number if you can. If not, reach out to me, email me, whatever, phone call, and ask me, hey, what is this bill number and what does it do? Because when you call, the better you sound that you understand the bill when you talk to them, the more serious they take you. And if you're a doctor, lawyer, firefighter, whatever, tell them that too. Like, hey, I'm a firefighter at Comal County. And anyways, I've been watching these bills for a long time. This is one we want pushed. And I would really appreciate that you as one rep supports this bill. So, and it has to do with being respectful to them. There's a time when it comes where you're going to have to be disrespectful or whatever, but you don't want that to be your initial conversations, right? You want to build a relationship with them if you can, and hopefully they'll have an open ear to you. Because if you go in there and just hammer them super quick, they're just going to turn off anything that you have to say and not listen to it. So, any more questions? Yes, sir.
Do you have any insight into these Republican politicians who are saying publicly that they're for guns, but then they're doing everything kind of below the surface to short circuit gun freedom?
Yeah, so I have friends that identify as Republican, and we have some pretty deep conversations. And one was yesterday. Said I'm from Brady. We decided to go to the next town over to get some Mexican food, and anyways, we had a conversation, and it was about red flag laws, Gainesville, because I was dealing with that yesterday. And anyways, he was like, hey, I'm okay with the cops showing up and taking my guns. And anyways, like he's like, if my wife claims that I have been abusive to her, I'm fine with the cops coming and taking them, and then I can get them back later when I'm through. Like, that's not how it works. Like, there's already processes in place for domestic abuse and everything like that. But the cops just showing up taking your guns, and you have to prove that you're innocent later is the exact opposite of what we're supposed to have. We're supposed to be innocent first until proven guilty. You're not supposed to have your guns taken from you. unless you've actually been convicted of crime and it's gone through due process. As far as the legislators go, trying to get back on your point on the question, is there's Republicans like that, unfortunately, that some of them are urban Republicans that have, I don't probably want to attack anybody, but I live in Brady, which is the greatest town in the world, so my normal time is going out to a ranch hunting pigs or something like that, so I don't get to live the same kind of life that the urban folks do. I'm around guns all the time, not just because of what I have this job because I'm a gun guy. I'm not a gun guy because I have this job. And so people who have grown up without guns or in urban environments where there's not a lot of guns around and they don't understand the statistics of it, a lot of politicians get elected like that, right? And they know that, oh, we're supposed to run as pro-gun and we support the Second Amendment. You can almost always get them to say but somewhere after that. But anyways, that's where I'm at on that. So does that answer your question? Yes, sir. Any other questions? No, awesome. All right, yes, sir. Yeah.
Why does the NRA suck so bad?
Okay, so we have a rule at GOA, which is we don't talk badly about any other organizations. One thing I will say is NRA, the NRA lobbyist does a certain thing, and actually I'll be honest with you, the NRA lobbyist does really well on some things, and she's very good with personal relationships with a lot of legislators. And so she can go in there and have a personal conversation. She knows on a personal basis, and she can say, hey, Rick, why are you doing this? Our membership is not going to support this, and it's going to be hard for us to back you. For us at GOA, we have a different approach, which is a lot of times it's hammering them out when they're doing the wrong thing. We're known as, there was a bill that came up the other day that the chairman of a committee reached out and wanted to know, hey, are we going to get hammered for GOA if we pass this bill out of committee? And the answer is, yeah, we have to measure how much political capital we're willing to exert onto one bill versus other bills and all that. But anyways, the NRA has one style of how they do things, and so they have some things that I'll say that I like about what I see right now, but we're simpatico on some things too. But anyways, we have a different approach. And one more thing on that is there's like about 5 of us gun groups that are at the Capitol all the time. I truly believe that the more we work together and the more of us gun groups that are there, the more effective we can be. We can hit from all different angles. And that's if we let our egos get away, like, oh, well, I'm GOA, no other gun group should get attention or whatever. I don't think that's a good idea either. So yes, sir.
Will the GOA ever consider endorsing libertarians and freeway waste, especially if the Republicans turn out to be not as pro-gun?
It has to do with viability, how much money can you raise, and what's your likelihood of winning that race. So yeah, so there's Democrats that during constitutional carry, 6,000 voted for the constitutional carry, which is really surprising, right? So generally, we're only a gun organization. That's what we look at. We don't look at anything else. So if a Democrat has supported their gun bills through, then we don't rail against them in their districts or anything like that, or candidates. One of them was a Democrat last session. He's a Republican now, and he's Representative Ian, and he got put as the chair of the committee that a lot of our gun bills are coming through. And he was pro-gun as a Democrat, and he's been very pro-gun as a Republican. I was a little concerned at the beginning of the session, hey, he's going to be the head of this committee. Is it going to be all of our bills getting killed? And surprisingly, he has blocked a lot of really bad anti-gun bills. He lets them go to committee, but then ultimately those bills don't get a vote on, don't pass out. So from our side, we're grateful for that. So it just depends more on what your viability is of can you get elected in your district. So especially nonpartisan races, we stay out in the local races, but there's things that we need to help in some ways. So yeah. Last question? Yes, sir.
Wasn't John Horton the reason it took so long for constitutional carry to get passed?
It wouldn't surprise me. A lot of so what I see is a lot of state legislators that want to advance, right? They don't want to upset the people that are higher up than them, so they won't speak out against those people. Here's a perfect example. I'm trying to stick with pro-gun only, but COVID, I did not cuss really before COVID happened, and I won't cuss now, but anyways, the whole thing through COVID, I'm just like, what the F is going on? What's wrong with people? Anyways, because people were giving up their liberty like it never mattered to them at all. people were willing to just bow down to tyrants, who shut down businesses, shut down gyms, shut down parks. And it was just mind blowing that we had so many Americans that would instantly bow down and let fear lead them away from what they you ask most people, they'll say, oh, I believe in liberty. And then you watch through COVID and everybody just gave it up. And it's like, what the heck is going on with you people? This is probably immature, but I had a friend, we went dating one day, and this was right after COVID thing started up, and he got in his car, and he rolled his window down, was talking to me, and I'm gonna sound real mature when I tell the story, but anyways, I went to shake his hand, he's like, I'm not shaking your hand, he started rolling the window up, and I licked all the way across the window just to show him. This is ridiculous, like the numbers don't match, the fear doesn't match. Anytime, what I learned at a young age, anytime your government tells you something, do the exact opposite, you have a higher probability of success. So that's where I approached that. I had a congressman who his staff member reached out to me and said, hey, please quit posting that COVID is not serious. Please quit minimizing the seriousness of COVID. And he starts to take it by, as you know, I went to medical school. Just like an instant, okay, now I'm gonna have to worry about this guy, what he says. But anyways, he said things in there, and I'll try to remember off the top of my head. He said it's absolutely the government's duty to use force to protect people. That's the basic statement that came out of that. And it's literally word for word says that. And it's like, how do you have that mindset if you're working as a Republican staffer for a Republican congressman? You know, what do the Republican congressmen think? And I sound like we're going really hard just after Republicans or whatever, but there's good Republicans too. Just keep that in mind. Lots of us are Thomas Massey fans, and some other guys out there. But anyways, I'll wrap up with that. That was the last question. Thank y'all for y'all's time. I appreciate everything.